Welcome to Just Some Points. Happy New Year. This is the first episode of our podcast, and I hope you had a great transition to the new year. Today, Melissa and I will talk about trends that we see are important in marketing in 2021, things you should definitely consider and take into account while you put a new strategy together for the year. With that said, we have a lot to go through. Melissa, why don't you get us started with social media? What do you see on the horizon related to social media in 2021?
I think there are three really big topics we need to look into for 2021. The first being virtual events. We saw a lot of social media platforms investing in the technology and the software to improve their live streaming and their, virtual events and signups and registrations and things like that. Platforms that weren't currently using it, like Pinterest, for example, they definitely got involved in it. A lot more video engagement overall on Facebook and Instagram and even LinkedIn as well. So that's definitely a trend that's here to stay. I don't think we're going to be going back to massive live events anytime soon. So definitely a tactic to consider in 2021.
Yeah, I also actually on that note, before we move on, is like you can see that how quickly everybody adjusts. It's the CES, the biggest computer exhibition in the world that's being held in Las Vegas usually every year, is completely virtual this year. It's going on right now as we speak. And so it's possible, and it certainly will be interesting to see how this will continue to evolve. Another example I want to make on that, on the big scale, is NetEase. That's a mobile focused company, and they're in gaming as well. It's a Chinese company. They just had, I think in December or in January, they had the biggest live event ever in the history of the internet just recently. So it shows that it's not just the little things, but also the big things that we will completely change.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And with that, I mean, the second biggest change that we saw on social media this year was the e-commerce side of things, the shopping side of things. Instagram, for example, completely overhauled their entire app layout to focus more on the Instagram shopping sections and the interactive shopping experiences that you have on Instagram. And TikTok is another really big example where they really shift their platform to drive more social media buying as well.
That's right. It's like in a way you could really start arguing that while social media have been about the social aspect and about engagement, now you get the feeling that it's really about driving revenue more and more, and that it's really driving engagement and the social interaction to drive revenue and shopping. And so TikTok is a good example you made. They with their partnership with Shopify. So it will be interesting to see. So I completely agree with you on that.
Yep. And then the final thing about social media, we've been saying it for a couple of years now, but it's always a good reminder that conscious social media planning is always really, really important. Keeping up, making sure that your content is keeping up with the latest news, making sure that you are being aware of your target audience and not even the target that you might not actually be trying to get can still find you and still form an opinion on you as well. So you don't want any backlash. You want to just make sure that everything you post is, reviewed and carefully thought out before you post anything.
Yeah, and we've seen that in our business too, where last year we had numerous projects and clients, like big publishing companies, but also small companies that want us to help them with conscious content, on which we have a whole episode last year on what conscious content is and how people should start focusing on conscious content. So I think we will continue to see that, and what's going on in politics, I think, will further drive that actually home. And that companies, we have to start taking that serious. So that's all good. That's a good summary, and I agree with the direction we'll take. Just a few. Let's do a quick go through the platforms. Pinterest, I'm a huge fan. If people watch our episodes, they know I love it. But they have certainly switched from just being a platform, I mean, where you can actually search, and get inspired by pictures and videos, towards actually now social events. Really interesting.
Mhm.
TikTok, they're still here, and they will continue to be here. We said that for all along. It will continue to drive, business. I think they're really just starting. I think.
Mhm.
Um, Instagram, I'm not a big Instagrammer. Any thoughts on Instagram? You just mentioned it. Shopping is the big change last year.
Yeah, shopping, and they introduced a new video platform called Reels. So again, it's just all video engagements and increasing the amount of video being used on Instagram versus just regular photos.
Right. Twitter will be interesting to watch this year because they're playing around with subscriptions, subscription model. So that's something that we will have a close eye on.
Mhm.
Facebook, well, Facebook, we could have a whole episode again, which will not. They will have partially a rocky year and partially an interesting year. The rocky year, due to the lawsuits. So we'll see what happens with Facebook this year.
Mhm.
From a marketing perspective, it's definitely something you have to continue to invest and be on. Just be aware of what's going on there. YouTube, I think, had a big year. It's a little bit under the radar, in my opinion, but I think it had a big year in 2020, and I think it will have an even bigger year in 2021.
Yep.
So with that, we touched on it. Let's move on to the next category, e-commerce. Um, any thoughts on e-commerce, Melissa?
I would say for me, the biggest takeaway was that, for years, Amazon was always number one, and they still are number one, but you are starting to see some bigger guns entering the field in order to compete with Amazon. For example, Walmart, they came out with Walmart Plus, very similar features to Amazon, with the exception, I think now you can get gas discounts at certain gas stations at
Oh,
Walmart.
didn't know that.
Um, eBay is seeing a spike in, their audience and the purchasing being done on eBay. And then again, the social media is really huge. They're really starting to drive more social media. So I think the channels for actual purchasing are increasing, and it's definitely something to consider looking into going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would say, while there is more diversification on shopping opportunities and in all of the things you just mentioned, I think at the same time there's more consolidation and more pressure on the small ones. You have to be really good, um, as a if you provide e-commerce, that you really provide the service that is now being expected. I just actually made an example to a colleague recently where I wanted to shop, and actually related to that, let me just back up a little bit. There's a distinct movement away from Amazon at the moment. I just learned that actually there's a don't shop Amazon movement. That's actually the actual thing. And even I, for myself, for not quite a while, I always try to shop somewhere else and not just at Amazon. And so I was looking for something, found another company. Actually, I ended up with Target, and I said, okay, I'll buy a Target for a change. But Amazon offered me to ship it to me within a day, and Target said I will get it a week and a half later. I said, if you want to play in that space, even as a small company, that's something that is really tough, to grow business on. Those are the things. Shipping is a huge differentiator, if you want to play in e-commerce.
Yep.
Um, Customer service, Melissa, we've seen a lot of change in customer service. I would say largely improved due to the pandemic.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. I think overall, the customer expectations have changed. Like you just said with the shipping, the expectation overall has just completely changed. Everybody wants something a lot more immediately than a lot of businesses can currently provide. And that same goes for just customer service in general, and just being able to contact businesses a lot more than just outside of that 9 to 5 customer service phone call option that a lot of businesses still like that model that a lot of businesses still follow. Um, the
Right, and then in that space, we talked about it in one of the episodes, actually in a couple of episodes, the role of chatbots. Chatbots certainly came a long way. Where a few years ago we talked about it, I wrote about it. That is something to watch, but they were a little clunky, and they're still certainly not, without mistakes and issues. Nevertheless, chatbots came a long way, and businesses should seriously look at it. Small businesses and big businesses, it's valid. It's a valid option to be contacted and provide information back to customers or potential customers via chatbots. The Facebook chatbot certainly got huge improvement, and attached to that, within customer service, the role of AI that has really improved a lot last year, and I would say this year is something where we will see the chatbots be more and more being used. Again, even by small companies, don't be afraid thinking about implementing, asking companies like us to help you with, or your agency to help you with implementing chatbots for your orthopedic practice or whatsoever.
Mhm. Yep.
The next one is very close to what you do every day. And I would say the headline for SEO is SEO needs serious attention in 2021. While in the last few years, things were, more focused on content in general. And, there were always, SEO always requires changes and constant nurturing and maintenance. But this year is really a big year in SEO, right?
Yes, definitely. Google announced last year, probably about mid last year, I think it was around September, that come May of 2021, they are going to roll out what is called the page experience update. And, if you've seen our previous episodes, you know exactly what we're talking about. It's a really big topic. And basically, what this means is that the search engine algorithm and the factors that get played into if your website ranks in the top positions of search result pages or not is more and more getting involved in the actual physical page experience, and not just the content and the keywords that are on your page. Like we were saying, the customer expectations are constantly changing, and that the same is true with your website and the overall website design, the website architecture. I think it still takes about 2 or 3 clicks before someone, if you can't convert somebody in 2 to 3 clicks on your website, you're very likely going to lose that customer. And that's definitely something that Google is starting to take into play with the core Web Vitals, which is a part of the page experience update. And the core Web Vitals are consisting of, how fast your website loads, how fast does it take to interact with the browser? So how fast does it take for a button reaction to occur? Um, and then when somebody's loading a website on your page and you're scrolling and all of a sudden things are starting to load and change where you are on the page, the shift layout that is happening, that plays a big role in the overall page experience. So, Google gives us these warnings for, well in advance for a reason. It means that it's going to be a really big update, and they're giving us time to, look at our websites and make sure that our websites are starting to meet the criteria before the rollout come May. And some studies have already shown that only 8 out of 10 websites don't meet the criteria right now. So
Wow.
it's a lot of work that needs to be done. And and that's why they kind of give us these heads up. This is coming next year kind of thing.
I want to reference a episode we did just a few weeks ago in December, solely focusing on that. We'll put the link down below. Something you should definitely look at. We, in summary, I would say, keep focusing on content, but this change is really very much a technical change related to SEO. and you really have to have the need for a new strategy for 2021, where you should focus your time and money, at least in the early part of the year. And I would highly advise you or recommend our episode in December. Moving on to healthcare. Healthcare got a major push, in my opinion, in the right direction. What I mean with that is, I had as late as last year in January, 2 months before the pandemic really hit, I had a meeting with an executive and also with a few doctors who really poo-pooed the use of telemedicine. I said, yeah, it's a very small piece of our business. Nobody really needs it. It's not something we have to invest. 8 weeks later, that company was struggling, or those companies were struggling to get telemedicine in, and none of those people are, arguing anymore, if telemedicine is needed. So last year's, the pandemic, in my opinion, was a big push in healthcare. Do we change healthcare, for the future? And in my opinion, for the better, because telemedicine is truly an enrichment, not a replacement, but enrichment of healthcare. It helps to deliver services differently, and the patient experience can be better depending on what the illness is, or the ailment is, what the problems are. And it's something that we will not see go away, even once we conquer the pandemic. Related to that, it was already in the coming, but also had almost a breakthrough, but definitely will have a big breakthrough this year, is remote patient monitoring. Remote patient monitoring it was just rolled out a few years ago. There are charge codes now for healthcare companies. And if anybody's interested, I've spent a lot of time on that, and can certainly help companies to implement that. But it would be worth the time for a whole episode. But telemedicine, remote patient monitoring, and wearable healthcare trackers are all things that will that we change the healthcare industry, and that, combined with the changes in patient experience and customer experience, what we talked about before, is really changing the face and of healthcare overall. Progressive practices actually, started realizing early on last year that this is not like just a pain in the neck, something they have to do, but they saw that as an opportunity to drive new businesses, to create new channels, and open up, their business opportunities. And we have some clients that really drove a lot of revenue through these new channels. So, if you're in healthcare, I really think make sure that 2021 you embrace those changes that happened in 2020, realize that they are here to stay, and further build on it and roll them out. Other marketing trends and news, from last year that will certainly make it into this year. 5G. 5G will have a huge impact on marketing, because it expands the reach, especially in rural areas. Rural areas will be able to, in rural areas, you will be able to reach potential customers, because of the 5G network, to provide marketing technologies, and things like augmented reality are finally able to actually be used in marketing because of 5G. So that's something to watch. Melissa, streaming services. What do you think about streaming services going into 2021 and beyond?
I think that the streaming services are, obviously everything is just getting more and more fragmented, but that means that there is more and more advertising opportunities. So from a business perspective and from an advertising perspective, it's really exciting to see a lot of the ad platform changes that are happening with these. Particularly Hulu, this past year made it a lot easier for smaller businesses to get their video ads up on the Hulu streaming services. And I would imagine that other streaming services are going to follow. we did a report, I think a couple of months ago, that actually showed that most people do prefer to pay less money for some ads rather than completely ad free. So it's definitely a really large advertising opportunity for 2021.
Yeah, great. AI is gaining speed. It's making its way in all kinds of things. We mentioned it before. Customer service and shopping, it's certainly in there already. So something to watch. Again, we mentioned all of those things. They're worthwhile to just keep track if you're marketing and if you're thinking about growing a business. Map search, we had a whole episode in, I think, December or November on how the usage of map apps is changing and what the opportunities are in there. Again, we'll put the link for that episode in down below, because I think it's definitely worthwhile to really have a serious look at maps and how they can apply to your marketing strategy. And then voice search is something I would say didn't have a breakthrough last year yet. It's something, but it's something that we should keep watching. And certainly with the increased performance and of devices, it's something I would say I wouldn't call it dead yet, and it's something we should still have to watch. So I think that was a quick summary of what we thought is should be on your horizon, on your watch list for 2021. Any final words, Melissa?
I think 2021 is going to be a really exciting year. It definitely, a lot of the trends that we were seeing in 2020 are definitely here to stay in 2021 and probably even later years after this as well. So I think this is going to be a really big transition year overall.
I would agree with you. Actually, I'm not sure if I would consider a transition year. Actually, I would. I had similar conclusions as you. I think this year will be a year of change, and I think it will be a year where a variety of trends and technologies that we've seen over the past few years will have actually a breakthrough.
Yep.
Some of the things you mentioned before, I think will really have a breakthrough, like the bots, for example, and other things. But the one thing that we didn't really mention, we as an underlying theme that we want to put in the summary, and that is mobile, mobile, mobile. Everything you do, whatever you do, whatever channel you use, whatever technology you use, make sure it is usable and not just somehow usable, but we well usable with a great patient or customer experience on mobile devices. So mobile will have a huge year, whatever that means, in apps, in flow, in technology. And then SEO, I think also based on what Melissa said, has a big year. But on that, I want to make the point, not this year in general. Right now, at the beginning of the year, you have to focus on SEO, not in August, right now. So whatever, if you in the past did an annual marketing strategy, which unfortunately many people don't do, then what we've seen with many clients, they have a 3-year strategy or 2-year strategy, and then the following year, they kind of revise it and adjust it. I think this year will have to be a year where you might just actually put your last year's strategy to the side and start from scratch. You can look at it, but start with a new strategy because so many things have changed. Also, I think this year will also be a year where we all have to watch the lawmakers. I think there will be changes forced from the lawmakers. What those might be, I don't want to predict, but I think there will be things that will impact all of us. So I hope this was helpful. I hope we will see you this year again with our episodes, and see you soon. See you next week. Bye.